Hi guys, this is Andy the Expedition Hiker, and this week's video is the first part of the Pilgrims Way. It's a 163-mile route which starts at Winchester by the shrine of St Swithin and continues all the way to Canterbury Cathedral and to the shrine of Thomas Becket, with a 17-mile extension down to Dover Castle. I researched this route thoroughly beforehand and kept to the ancient Pilgrims route all the way, which is slightly different to what the Long Distance Walking Association, or LDWA, has recorded the route and length. The trail is England's oldest pilgrimage and dates back even before the murder of Thomas Becket in 1170, as the route follows an extended trackway that dates back to the 6th century BC. As I arrived at Winchester, a city steeped in history, I also arrived in torrential rain. As I left the train station, I wandered around this ancient capital of England and took in the history and sights of what Winchester had to offer, before starting the trail the following day. I was lucky enough when reaching Winchester College, which was built in 1382, to get a special insight to this rather special old public school. Enjoy. On this site, William the Conqueror built a royal castle. The Great Hall was added by King Henry III and was the social and banqueting centre of the castle. It is the finest hall of that period to have survived in England. Throughout its history, the Great Hall has witnessed important events. On occasion, Parliament assembled here. The Great Hall was also the setting for courts of law, for Sir Walter Raleigh's trial in 1603, and for meetings of justice of the peace until 1889. King Henry VIII's famous Round Table dated back between the 13th and 14th century, hangs in the Great Hall. Names of King Arthur's 24 knights are written around the edge. This is the rear entrance to the Great Hall, which is passage through the Queen Eleanor's garden, named after Queen Eleanor, wife of King Henry III, and her daughter-in-law, Queen Eleanor, wife of King Edward I. The garden, recreated in 1986, is a lovely tranquil place to pause and reflect on 1,000 years of history on this site. So this is the Great Hall of Winchester. And the buildings surrounding it are all that's left of Winchester Castle. We can see some of the remains of the castle, or the foundations to them. That's about all we can see now. This is the Peninsula Barracks. This is the west gate to the city. Now, used to be, along the side here, would be a wall that surrounded the city. And I think there's actually 6 entrances into the city itself via the city walls. So now we're actually in the inner city of Winchester. Winchester is the former first capital of England, originally a large Iron Age settlement known as an oppidum. Then by 70 AD, it became the 5th biggest Roman town in England, known as Venta Bulgarum, part of the Roman province of Britannia, after the Roman legions left around 407 AD. the large town became abandoned until the Saxons became to settle in southern England and went from being called Venter Belgarum to Venter Caiesta. The street we walk down now is the oldest high street in England, originally by the Romans, and then the Saxons redesigned the old Roman streets to create a grid shape of streets to be better protection from enemies. As we continue down the high street, soon we'll come to the cathedral. Now just in the distance, you may just see the bronze at the end of Alfred the Great. By the year 597, the new Christian faith created by the Saxons spread through southern England, and by the 7th century the first Christian church was built in the newly named Winton Caiesta, and first named the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul's, and later becoming the Old Minster. In the year 676, the bishop moved to Winton Caiesta, making the minster into a cathedral, and the town became a city. The city then became known as Winchester. Alfred the Great became ruler of the West Saxons after he and his brother defeated the Danish Vikings at the Battle of Ashdown. In 871, at the tender age of 21, Alfred was crowned the King of Wessex and established Winchester as his capital. It is believed that then Bishop of Winchester, Swivens, tutored the young King Alfred. Winchester, the now capital of England, became a place of learning as Alfred persuaded books to be changed from Latin to Old English. Alfred also built a navy to protect against attack from the sea, and fortified buildings were built across England for easier defence from enemies of foreign lands. In front we have the bishop's house. It's probably the most senior bishop's house in England, as this was the capital of England 1,000 years ago. And just peering in the background, in between the house and the palace walls, is the cathedral, the tower of the cathedral. And looking on our right hand side, this is Wolvesley Castle, which was the original bishop's palace. It was fortified with a curtain wall after the Roundheads attacked it in 1643. The surviving ruins of Wolvesley were largely the creation of one man, Bishop Henry of Blois, 1129 to 71, who built a palace befitting his immense wealth and powerful position. When Henry of Blois became Bishop of Winchester in 1129, the residence consisted of a large hall block, the West Hall, which has been built in about 1110 by the previous bishop William Giffard. Until his death 42 years later, Henry continually added new buildings, starting with another hall block, the East Hall. He then added a keep, a defensive tower and 2 gatehouses. After the Battle of Hastings in 1066, King Harold's wife surrendered the city to William the Conqueror. He began to build a royal palace and castle where we visited earlier. And then in 1079, the old minster was demolished for a larger Norman cathedral, which still stands today. This is the more modern house of the Bishop of Winchester. Probably would have been the original entranceway to Wolvesley Castle and the palace. Now more fitting for a bishop of modern day. By the 12th century, the Royal Mint was moved to London, which had become the largest town in England by population, and from then, Winchester lost its status and London became the new capital of England. In the 14th century, William of Wykeham, who was Bishop of Winchester and Chancellor of England, founded New College, Oxford in 1379, and Winchester College in 1382. So this is the Hospital of St. Cross. Henry Compton. On the left is actually the elm houses, and these are the oldest elm houses in the world. And then we have the chapel. is St Catherine's Hill. It used to be an iron fort on top of it. There's no remains really of that now, but there is a maze on top of it. It's only one of 6 mazes of this style left in England. Anyway, let's head back towards Winchester. So this is part of the original building of Winchester College. And this is one of the oldest streets of Winchester. The building on the right hand side was built in the 11th century. The buildings on the left hand side look like they were built around the 17th century. One of the entrances to the college. Beyond this is the War Memorial. Example of window tax. There's 6 windows there and 4 windows there that have all been bricked up to reduce the amount of money a building would have to pay for window tax. In this house once lived Samuel Sebastian Wesley, 1810 to 1876, an elusive composer of church music, of organist of the Cathedral and College, 1849 to 1865. So I do believe on the right hand side is the road is College Street. So down here is the main entrance to the college. So this in front of us is the Pilgrims School. This was set up in 1962. So I presume this is the oldest part of the college. I'll just have a quick glimpse in, see how far we can get in before somebody stops us.
Which is their accommodation and things like that.
Right.
And the chapel on the end of it. So
is that the chapel wall there then?
That's the chapel wall right in front of it. So if you go, which one is it? New College, Oxford. You'll think, that looks familiar. Because you built the same place, so they're quite similar.
Wycombe, is it?
Wickham, yeah.
Wickham.
Yeah. But yeah, 13. I think the 11 bit, was that the blooming Cathedral?
Well, the cathedral was built in, the old ministry was built in 852. Something built before the old ministry, around the 6th century.
Richard II was in power in those days.
Okay.
I'm sure it was 1382.
Right, okay.
I wasn't here.
So this is just accommodation in this part?
Yeah, I mean you've got a couple of dons live up there who are in charge of the boys, and
right.
Around these 2 sides they've got their accommodation, you know, and things like that.
Okay.
Their chambers where they sort of can sit down and relax and do a bit of work. The chapel, and behind that there's another old cloister that is not quite as old as this, but still quite old.
So how old was the chapel then?
Well, it was built at the same time. It was all built, this first, well you can see through the chapel and all this lot down here. This bit here, so it basically, this bit was a brewery, bit going up there was stables, their version of car parking. I bet there weren't enough. So yeah, so basically from just behind that wall to the other side of this one, and going back to the other side of the chapel. So it wasn't vast when it was built.
I'm actually doing the Pilgrims Way. It all starts for here.
The glass doors aren't original.
Oh wow.
Oh, yeah.
It does look different though to the rest of the building. Obviously flint, that's not flint, but...
Yeah, I assume that was a design feature as it was built at the same time, because a big part of the boys' schooling is they have to be in chapel. And it costs them to come here.
The current Chancellor came here, isn't he?
He did, yeah. Every year they take in, I'd say 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They are going to be starting in September. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 Chinese.
Expands by the Asian community.
Yeah, yeah, and this place got lots. Not too happy with the fact that it might become co-ed. So I hear.
So hopefully you got a bit of a gist of that. That was the porter, and he gave us a bit of information to the college. But the college actually started with 70 scholars, and it's always been the same. The rest of them are called commoners. Scholars live within this building, they're all boarders. And as he said, that to get in here, there's vigorous exams they need to pass to get here to become a scholar. Wealth is not enough to get you to become a scholar. So there's 70 scholars and then 600 commoners. That's part of the college. They work in other buildings around Winchester. This is just mainly for the scholars. As I mentioned before, the price fees have gone up. So this is the headmaster's office to the college. And there's a nice little doggy having a bit of a doodle outside the headmaster's office. Anyway, let's head to the cathedral as it started raining. Lovely. The building in front was originally a lodging house, but better known as Jane Austen's house, as the famous novelist who wrote novels like Pride and Prejudice, Emma and Mansfield Park, stayed here frequently when visiting Winchester. In 1816, Jane began to feel unwell. In 1817, she and her sister Cassandra travelled to Winchester to see a famous doctor, but as Jane was waiting for an appointment at Winchester Hospital, her health rapidly declined, where she died in her sister's arms in the building in front on the 18th of July 1817 from Addison's disease. She was buried in the cathedral by the north side of the nave, aged just 41. Further novels were purchased after her death. Like many writers, their novels come from stories and locations and from their travels in the local area. Along the Pilgrims Way, we shall see some of these locations. As we walk through one of the gate-houses to the city, come across St. Swivens Street, and in particular this little chapel here goes over the entranceway. The St. Swivens Chapel, built in 1264. So this is one of the entrances into the cathedral grounds. You see some old houses on the right hand side. This is part of Inner Close. I'll head up towards the cathedral now. So these are the foundations of the old minster, the original cathedral, of which St. Swithin was the bishop. His body was buried originally by the edge of the old minster, but once he became a saint, his body was dug up, moved into the cathedral that we see in front of us today. Today, Winchester continues to be a bustling city with plenty to see and the start point of the South Downs Way National Trail and the Pilgrims Way. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, click the like and add a comment. Next week's video is the first day of the Pilgrims Way. So I'll see you next week. Bye-bye, hikers!